Hello, my name is Laura and I like to craft stuff. Welcome to my channel. I picked up some Halloween fabrics and the gag is I was trying to get fabrics to match this one. I had it in my stash, and yet for this quilt design that I picked out and the idea that I was inspired by, I may not even use this fabric at all, because I thought these two would like appear similar, and I don't think they will, not similar enough. So I'm actually thinking I'm just going to use these two, and then the design I have in mind needs tiny little squares, and so I'm going to use these two for that. Maybe not this one, because this is going to be the background. Maybe I'll use this one. I might use this one. Okay, let me show you the pattern. You probably already know by the title of the video, but I was thinking about what am I going to do with these fabrics. I want to use them, and then I got the idea to try Pieced Tulip 10-inch. So I will likely be using all of the measurements as they're listed, because this has a few more things going on. So I want this fabric to be the tulip, and I want this to be the background. And then I think that the orange for the inside of the tulip would be perfect. And then this white fabric for this bottom part. That one. Yeah, so I have quite a lot to cut. Luckily, most of them, I mean, they're similar sizes, so it looks like mainly 2.5 and 4.5. No, that says 4 7/8, so I might go up to 5 inches for some of these. And then that one's 2.5. So yeah, easy peasy. All right, let's get to work. So I do want to thank everyone for joining me and who have been joining me on my quilting journey. If you're looking for a direct, clear tutorial, this might not be the place for you, but I am cutting out 2.5-inch strips here, and then I'm going to do 5-inch strips on the larger fabric. I really enjoy Halloween fabric that is not so vibrantly orange and green and purple. I like the more subtle fabrics. I would like to also correct myself. That looks like it's 5.5 inches. So we're doing 5.5-inch strips. But yeah, so I usually do strips and then I cut them down into the squares. I also think that I forgot to mention the book. It's one that I've been using pretty frequently on my channel, so if you have watched previous videos, you know. But the book that I am using to just kind of play with different blocks is called 1000 Great Quilt Blocks by Maggie McCormick Gordon. And as always, I have it linked down below. The title is down below. I think it's out of print, but in case you want to go searching for it. I picked it up used at a local bookshop, and it was honestly, it had everything that I wanted. Enough blocks for me to just kind of test it out and pick and choose, you know. And so that has been what I've been doing. That's the progress on my channel, is going through and trying new stuff. Trying to challenge myself a little bit, but also have fun with pretty fabrics. So for the orange bit that's in the middle of the tulip, that is basically just a 4 patch with 2.5-inch squares. In theory, because the fabric is the same, you could do one, like the top strip, not squares. You could like cut it out to be like the exact length or whatever and skip having to sew two squares together. But I was a little bit worried about things lining up, and I guess thinking about it now, I could have just trimmed it off, but I don't know. In my head, I was like, the pattern looks like it's sewn together, so that's what I'm going to do. But you could do it that way, and it would probably be fine. And it would be less cutting and less sewing, you know. So, but I decided to basically sew the two squares together and then sew two squares together in the other direction. Pretty simple, pretty easy peasy. One thing I do want to say about this this pattern is that it is actually a lot easier than I even realized. Like, putting together the blocks was super quick because a lot of it was stuff that I've been doing on my channel, you know, 4 squares or half square triangles, and then just strips. So with the 4 patch, I did decide to trim them down a little to 4.5 inches just to make it easier to deal with trimming them down and trimming down the half square triangles. Because the way that I do my half square triangles is I put the 2 squares together and I sew 2 lines diagonally down the middle, and then I cut them apart. And I find that way super easy, but I've been told there is another way that I might need to try soon. So no spoilers, but maybe that might be an upcoming video. So here I am ironing open my 4 squares. And as always, I love watching ironing them open. It's satisfying as always. And then I do the same thing with my half square triangles before I trim them down. And I am not super, I know that if you're particular about the way that you press your seams, that the final layout will be a lot smoother. But I'm a little lazy when it comes to that regards. Like, I'll try to have the seams going opposite while I'm sewing, but to try to fiddle with pressing them, that's too much. Too much for me right now. Maybe someday. You never know. A year from now, I'll probably be like pressing my seams in the very specific direction. 4.5. Did I say 4.5? 4.5 is what I am trimming these down to. So all of the blocks are going to be 4.5 for the tulip section, I guess. So the final layout of the tulip section is basically a 4 square. You have 2 half square triangles, 1 just plain 4.5 inch square, and then your little 4 patch that I was making. This, laying it out, I'm starting to realize that perhaps my fabric choices all around were too busy, and I needed maybe one of them to not be so busy. I'm starting to realize it, but I'm hoping for the best. So I continue on and I sew my patches, my little tulips. I sew them all together and I keep going. The next part is, of course, to iron them all, because that's the most important part. But then we add on the strips for, I guess, kind of like petals, maybe? If that's what it's supposed to represent. I think The busyness of the fabric wouldn't have been as big of an issue if the patterns on both fabrics were not the opposite of each other. So like the white fabric has a lot of black designs on it, whereas the like grayish black fabric has a lot of white designs on it. And I think that from far away it kind of muddles up. So that's just a foreshadowing of the final layout. I think also the strips that I wind up using, or the secondary, not secondary, the next fabric that I wind up using, there was a little second square that was going to be where the two panels met. That fabric is also very close to the tulip fabric, and I was hoping that the tone of the cream would separate it, but from far away you can't really tell. They look like the same thing. So that's just, you know, sometimes they don't work out. However, I do think that, I mean, we'll get to my final feelings, I guess, on this quilt. This had nothing to do with the pattern and everything to do with my fabric choices. And ultimately I don't have any regrets because I do like those fabrics, and I know that when I'm cozied up with this quilt, I will probably still like the fabrics. So there's that. Ironing them out. Always so much fun. So here I am about to iron out the strips. So there were two 2.5-inch strips and then one little 2.5-inch square, and that little square is not the same fabric as the tulip, but it kind of looks like it could be. So that's just, you know, a forewarning about busy fabrics, I guess. Like, it doesn't always work out, but sometimes it, you know, it might work out. I do love the designs where it kind of just is like a 4-patch that keeps getting bigger and bigger, or at least that was how I approached this. So once I had all of my patches or my squares done, I then laid those out in a 4-patch, and I decided to lay them out where the tulips were kind of going all the way out, like in the 4 corners. I think it looked the best. I really personally like this layout, and I would absolutely love to do this kind of, this pattern again, just maybe with different color choices. Anyway, here's the final layout. I did add borders in between all the patches, so there's 16 of the actual tulips, and then I did, oh gosh, what are those strips? They look like they might be 4.5-inch strips for around and bordering the quilt. And I wonder if maybe the strips added to the busyness. So if I had done the borders in a different fabric that was maybe more plain, perhaps the tulip blocks would be okay. That being said, I mean, from far away, is it busy? Yes, but curled up with this, I know that I'm going to be appreciating all of the Halloween fabric that I'm looking at. And also, I would like to say that despite the busyness, and maybe because of the busyness, it looks like everything's lined up great. So, that, you know, if you want to try having busyness to hide any mistakes, it seems to work, from what I can see anyway. Thank you so much for joining me in another video of quilting, whatever I feel like. And I post every other Tuesday, so if you want to join me in future videos, hanging out, watching me fiddle around with sewing and quilting, then, you know, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I will see you in the next one. All right. Bye.